Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Venture Fuel Visionaries podcast. I'm your host, Fred Schonenberg, and on today's show, we have Claudia Reuter. Claudia is the director of the Roberts Innovation Fund at Yale Ventures. The Roberts Innovation Fund was launched in 2022 to provide funding, mentoring, and strategic support for Yale faculty-led projects to assist in the commercialization of breakthrough innovations to solve real-world problems. Everything from new methods to purify our water, advance quantum computing, democratize AI, and deliver life-saving drugs are just some of the projects that have been funded just this year by the Robert Innovation Fund Awards, which provided $1 million in accelerator funding to support 10 new inventions led by faculty from Yale School of Engineering and Applied Science. I'll have Claudia tell you all about that in more detail, but in her own right, she is an accomplished entrepreneur and leader. She has been recognized as one of the women to watch in science and technology by the Boston Business Journal. Her first book, Yes, You Can Do This, How Women Start Up, Scale Up, and Build the Life They Want, debuted as a #1 new release bestseller on Amazon for business and entrepreneurship. She's also the creator and host of the podcast, The 43%, where she interviews women navigating career and family decisions in a variety of ways, from leaning in to leaning out and all the paths that are in between. She was a member of the board of directors for Lessonly, a venture-backed SaaS company, until its successful exit in 2021. So without further ado, please join me in welcoming Claudia Reuter. Claudia, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks so much for having me. It's great to be here.
So can you share a little bit more depth on the journey from entrepreneur to your current role as the director of the Robert Innovation Fund?
Yeah, sure. So it's been a long time, but yeah, I started out in what I would call the world of tech on the back end in the late 90s, early 2000s, and had the beginnings of a great career. And I stepped out of the workforce when I had my first child, who is now 21, and I came back in through entrepreneurship. So started a SaaS company. Was able to build a decent business, raise some capital, and then we were acquired in 2014 by a company called Houghton Mifflin Harcourt, which is one of the big traditional publishing houses, which has really moved to be more of an education, technology company. And then I went on to lead their digital services and their innovation team, which we called HMH Labs. And that was really when I started seeing the potential for supporting and connecting with other founders. So I knew my own journey and the challenges with that and the opportunities with that. But at HMH, we were at that point working on not only our core innovation strategy and product development, but we were also at that point working to better understand the startups in the ecosystem who might want to work within a company as established as that. So started to dip my toe into really spending more time with other founders and kind of hooked on that, and ultimately left HMH to join Techstars as a managing director, where I obviously dove into the investment side of the house and ran 2 accelerators as a managing director, and then was asked to step into a larger role as GM or general manager for the East Coast in Canada, where I was responsible for all the accelerators and their relationships on the East Coast in Canada. And then through a series of cool things at that point, I was on the board of Lessonly, which was just a phenomenal group of people to be able to work with. And their investors or initial investors included High Alpha, which has a studio. And so I went to spend some time with them working on a company, and then found myself this amazing opportunity at Yale through some really great relationships that I developed over the years. And this has just been a really unique opportunity to really see what's happening in the most technical way. I mean, I think when you're in the world that we're all in, from the VC standpoint or from even the big company standpoint, you hear a lot of people thinking about things either in an incremental way from an innovation standpoint, or you hear founders who are solving real world problems, but they're going to do so with existing technology. And this opportunity to work at Yale with folks at the School of Engineering and Applied Science has just been phenomenal, because I get to really understand the technology that will support the future, of many, many companies in some ways before it's even out in the world. So it's a really neat opportunity to kind of get under the hood with some things that I ordinarily wouldn't get to experience.
Yeah, I mean, your journey is so interesting, and I didn't know about the high alpha moment as well. But one of the things I was thinking about is when we talk to universities or hospitals or even large corporations, there is, sort of the how do we commercialize the IP that we have, these breakthrough ideas, and especially at universities, right? Like it's at the cutting edge, and it's things that often the people that are creating them don't have the experience as business owners or entrepreneurs. And so there's such a need for what you're doing. It's very interesting to see sort of your background and how that pieces together for this. So can you tell us a little bit about, what is unique about your approach at Yale?
Well, in the past, before I joined Yale and Yale Ventures, we have a new leader who stepped into this role of what we consider like an umbrella organization inside Yale called Yale Ventures, and that's Josh Duvall. And he's been really instrumental in helping people think of, one, that our mission is to really be in service of the other people and elements in the university who are trying to understand the world of entrepreneurship and how they can engage. It's also where all faculty accelerators are housed. So Roberts is one, Blavatnik is another fund focused on faculty, as well as Colton. And then it's also where the tech transfer office is. But there's been some really big shifts, I think, in Josh's approach and Yale Ventures' approach to this whole world. One, moving to be a true service organization for the university, and what all the things that looks like. So everything we're doing, we're thinking about how is this in service of people who are trying to better understand the world of how to commercialize or how to be an entrepreneur. But beyond that, pros, if there's let's say a liquidity event in the future or proceeds from a company that, again, Yale is not investing in these projects or these companies. We're making awards to the labs. But if a startup is formed, Yale typically would have a license between Yale and the new entity that basically is centered on the IP that was created. Part of the exciting work underway is that if there's a positive outcome from that, those proceeds go back to, it doesn't go to us in Yale Ventures, it goes back to the school department and lab from which the innovation came. So it's a really great place to be right now. And I'm really working in support of the School of Engineering and Applied Science and Dean Brock. And that, the School of Engineering and Applied Science is having its own just incredible growth and momentum happening as they've been working to really, unlock and unleash a lot of the built up demand that was already there for these types of things, right, and really foster this kind of culture of innovation and entrepreneurship that I'm super thrilled to be able to be a part of.
Can you give a couple examples of some of the either technologies or innovations that have received some support from you all thus far, just to kind of level set folks on what types of tech that you're talking about here?
Yeah, so just to give a little bit of context, the School of Engineering and Applied Science obviously is pretty broad in terms of the types of solutions that you see, ranging from people working in computer science on AI, blockchain, cryptography, to people, in physics, or people working on, semiconductors. So there's just a huge range of things being worked on. So when we take applications into Roberts, we have a pretty clear rubric of basic criteria that an application needs to have in order to be eligible for funding. One of which obviously is that you have a team member who has an appointment in the School of Engineering and Applied Science. But beyond that, we are looking for technical feasibility from a product perspective. Like, is there a proof of concept? Have they articulated how big this opportunity could be? And of course, these are all things that, as you know, help us better understand as we do market research where the potential is. But in terms of some of the things that we've actually been able to make awards to, it's been a really exciting year. We have one team, for example, who's actually worked under Professor John Fortner, is working to help us all remove PFAS, which is a horrible thing from our water supply, right? You've probably heard about that. We have another team that is essentially working on ways to make you've heard all the things going on with LLMs and ChatGPT, and everyone's trying to figure out how to harness this. They're actually working on and have developed a way to actually optimize the use of LLMs to increase, efficiency, improve inference, reduce your GPU load. We have another team that actually is this really cool collaboration between a professor from the computer science department, Ruzhika Piskak, and a professor from the law school. And they've actually partnered up. Her area of expertise and research is informal methods. And so they've actually partnered up to build solutions that can provide legal responses to questions that have the verification built in. So you're not experiencing, what we see with LLMs and hallucinations. So just huge range of things happening inside the School of Engineering and Applied Science right now.
It's so cool. So how do you help such disparate technologies and founders, right? So I'm sure they all have different levels of, I'll call it acentrepreneurship, backgrounds and sophistication, as well as their tech being totally different. So how do you help them accelerate their growth? Do you have a program? What is sort of your way beyond the grant? And then I want to jump into the grant for a second too.
Yeah, for sure. So that's actually one of the things we spent a lot of time on the first year, and now in the second year, I'd say we've really started to refine this. So from a programmatic perspective, unlike in an accelerator out in the wild where you can really get the founding team to hang out with you for 13 weeks or whatever the right number is. Obviously, these are, in many cases, faculty who have day jobs, and we don't want them to neglect their day job. And so it's always a little bit more challenging to think about how we approach programming. And so what we've done for this year that I'm really excited about, and I knock on wood, so far it's going really well, is there's another, colleagues inside Yale Ventures that are running programs that we call venture workshops. And essentially a venture lab workshop is modeled in some way after Creative Destruction Lab. But the idea is to really harness the know-how of our EIR or mentor community. So we have about over 150 industry experts and operators and former founders, et cetera, who are in the Yale Ventures Network. And we essentially curate the right ones for the awardees. And then basically with our colleague Min Kim, take several weeks to help prepare for a 90-minute Socratic coaching session where the faculty and their teams present what they plan to do or what their goals are. And they're able to get this feedback from multiple people at once who have the right industry know-how to, give their feedback and have those discussions. We then so we're making the award at the end of January. To get those scheduled and completed takes the spring, really. We also have students from the School of Management who come in as part-time associates to help us with fundamentals like market research and competitive landscape mapping and those types of activities. And then the goal is that after these workshops, we not only have a clear view of what the core important milestones are for these projects, but then we have full-time associates who come in for the summertime who help us work hand in hand with the teams to make progress on those milestones. And our hope is that we're able to help people be impactful. Obviously, it would be a great outcome if a spin out or a company is formed with a license, but at the end of the day, our job is to really see how we can support these projects, on whatever the best path is for them.
I love that. I think it's so smart because one of the things I've seen as we've studied accelerators and the different models, right, is this sort of like cookie cutter curriculum. And it just never works. Or it works, but it doesn't work the way that it should because each founder has different skill sets, is in a different position. Maybe they're great at marketing and terrible at the tech, or great at the tech and terrible at sales, right? Whatever it might be. And so they have different gaps. And so I love this as hey, let's sit down and see who are the experts for your particular technology, where you're trying to take it, what the goals are, have those right people advise you. And then let's put together a team to help you accelerate to that North Star, rather than being like, okay, here's the program. Like everybody's take what is valuable for you here and endure the rest.
Yeah, and I think that it's also a side effect of, again, we are essentially a service organization, and there is some content that we are continuing to develop that we will provide asynchronously to larger groups, or things that maybe people can grasp sort of off the shelf, and those things are being worked on. I think there's some additional efforts underway too to help with the framing exercise for faculty in particular. Like, as an entrepreneur out in the wild has a different set of needs and a different set of paths forward than someone who's trying to think about how to navigate this and this path towards commercialization while they're in a very important job. And so we're trying to make sure that we get the right materials around that to be supportive as well. We're also building out additional programming. So we're going to be running a pilot program in the fall, which we're calling like an Innovation Fellows program, where we're going to be trying to help people who are at, say, the postdoc level, who are inside one of these labs, and perhaps they want to go down the commercial path. We're going to be building out a 6-month pilot boot camp for those, where we're just doing 2 Fridays a month with a full day of a combination of content and mentor activities to hopefully help folks, build that operator muscle. And it can be something they either use, or they're better able to assess other people who want to help them.
Very cool. What advice would you have for would-be entrepreneurs in terms of navigating within established institutions? Right. And I'm thinking about this both in terms of like the academic world, but also, I'm sure you came across this in your previous roles as well, is there's a lot of folks that are intrapreneurs. They're in a big company, but they have an idea and they think there's something exciting here. What advice would you have for them on how to sort of break through?
I guess it depends on where they are in the institution and how they want to engage. I mean, certainly, and it also depends on the culture of the company, right? So when I think about, some of the larger organizations that might be going through digital transformation, I think one of the things that I do try to talk to or remind myself of with founders too, is that even if you think you have the best idea in the world and it's going to be the most disruptive thing and it should, have an impact, at the end of the day, the people in most big companies have very clear objectives that were agreed upon at their annual budget planning process, and they have their own targets to hit in order to be successful in their jobs. So, I think finding the right champion in an organization is really important, but also finding the right champion who has budget to do something with a startup is really important. And I think the number one thing someone can really do is also research everything, like really try to deeply understand what one of these big companies is working on, and you can find a lot, right, just on the internet and in investor relations decks and all these different things, but do your homework before you start thinking that you've got something that someone's going to want, and what else they've already tried. But definitely trying to find champions is important. If you're trying to, do engage with someone like Yale Ventures, I would, Yale Ventures is a great place to start, by coming to events. There's a whole bunch that are hosted. We just did the Innovation Summit. And it's a great way to get a kind of taste of what's going on. And then certainly if you think that you can provide, real value to a team, that's something we have a process for to, vet folks to become EIRs. If you have a startup that you want to get someone's attention, there's so many pitch competitions and different ways to get noticed in that front too. So just to try to, you got to get out there and do good research, ask good questions, I guess.
Yeah, no, I love it. And actually, that was one of the things I wanted to ask you about too. Can you tell everyone about the Yale Innovation Summit? Because I got introduced to it last year and had no idea how big and interesting. I mean, the speakers are awesome. So can you tell people that maybe might not know about it, its sort of purpose and all the things and how this year went?
Yeah, I mean, it was, I don't know what you thought. I thought it was awesome. I love being a part of it. So yeah, the Yale Innovation Summit has actually been going on for 10 years. And it just keeps getting bigger and bigger and broader and broader. But the idea that's sponsored and run by Yale Ventures. So essentially it's a summit that takes place over 2 days. This year it was at the end of May. It's usually around that time frame. And it's meant to really connect all the different things going on across Yale and the broader ecosystem and help people get a sense of what's happening and get exposure to amazing speakers and content. So we have a number of different tracks. There's a tech track, there's a bio track, there's a climate track, there's even an arts track. I'm responsible for the tech track. And basically, each track has a series of panel events and speakers, a keynote, as well as an opportunity for startups or founders to pitch for cash prizes. And we bring in great judges. But it all is in one place. So we had 2,200 people, I think, attend this year, all inside the School of Management. So, which is, for those not familiar, it's this beautiful building on the Yale campus. But 2,200 people is a lot of people. And so it's a really, and just phenomenal speakers. I mean, Chelsea Clinton was there, Emmett Shear was there. Yeah, it's just if you haven't gone, you should go. The next one's a year from now. So.
Very cool. Yeah, I agree. I would definitely highly recommend it. I wish I had like an hour to ask you these next questions, and I'm going to give you 5 minutes instead of an hour,
okay,
which is not appropriate. But looking at your podcast, looking at your book, and your background as both a founder and supporting entrepreneurs, one of the things I'd love to get your thoughts on. At Venture Fuel, we're very involved in Rogue Women. And it's an event we put on with Rogue Women Ventures, and it sort of talks to the lack of VC that gets invested in female founders, the lack of women that are VCs, and sort of this what is just like a completely troubling set of statistics. Yep. And I think some of the things that you've covered in both your podcast and your book is this ability to choose the journey that you want and carve your path. And I'm curious if you have any thoughts about how to right this ship in terms of the disparity of investment. And it gets me fired up anytime I see these numbers, because the point of venture capital is to look for new solutions for people that look at things differently. And so the fact that everyone invests in the same people, of course, you're not going to get that diversity of thought. And so it seems like a very disingenuous thing for the venture capital community, but that's probably a side note. I'm just curious, can you distill like your years of amazing podcasts and your amazing book into a 4-minute thought process on this? It's just something I'm very intrigued if you have any ideas of how to improve this.
Yeah, I mean, I don't pretend to have a magic wand to fix everything, but to your point, the numbers haven't changed that much. I mean, of all people who go for venture funding, I think it's like less than 2% or something actually get venture funding, period, men and women. But then of that percent, only 3%, or in it wavers up and down a little bit here or there, but we're talking about very small numbers, go to female founders, which really does make no sense given the number of the women who make up the population is 50%, right? And the number of college graduates is on par with that. I do think part of it stems there. I think there's a couple of things at play. One, you have to, see it in order to be it. So I think we need to keep thinking about how we get more women engaged in this world, because it's hard for people to imagine themselves in a role that when they're younger, that they don't see someone who looks like them in. So I think that also comes into how we think about the venture world. I can tell you, I hope that me being in this role, sends the right message that anyone should apply to this type of fund. And so I think the more we have women in venture roles in the MD or investor position, that will help. I also think there's some fundamental social structures at play. And some of the research I did for the book, there was a study I found that in the US at least, there was evidence to suggest that young girls in like elementary school are rewarded for compliant behavior, and boys are actually ignored for compliant behavior, but get a ton of attention for minor misdemeanor kind of behavior. And so there was an interesting connection there of like, if we're cultivating those types of reward systems at those very early ages, whether conscious or not, you develop people who are like, if you're rewarded for compliant behavior, it's harder for you to take a risk or to know how to just answer a question. Like they also did a study that showed, in investor meetings, part of what goes wrong sometimes is that an investor might ask about risk, and a man may typically be more likely to simply ignore that part of the question and take them back to where they want to go. And a female may be more likely to just be focused on getting the answer right and talk about the risk. And so I think the more we can bring these types of, unconscious things that happen to light, hopefully people will see that may be actually, informing some of the decisions they're making on investment, and also, the approach. So we can train or teach, folks how to answer some of these questions a little bit differently, make it safer to take risks, obviously, and also, try to, create a world where people see that this is what's happening, so we all know how to fix it.
Yeah, I love that. Thank you for sharing that. And I encourage everyone to check out your book as well as the podcast, and we'll put the notes to that and links to it. Speaking of which, where would you like people to go to learn more either about yourself or the Roberts Innovation Fund?
Oh, sure. I mean, if you want to learn more about the Roberts Innovation Fund, you can go to ventures.yale.edu and scroll to the Roberts section. If you want to know more about me, I guess I can send you some links after this for my book and podcast. So
that would be great. Yeah, we'll definitely include them. And Claudia, thank you so much for taking the time to chat and for all the amazing work that you're doing to spark change. It's really special, and we appreciate it.
All right. Thanks so much for having me. It was great to connect.